deep in my soul.
Good evening. Welcome to the second episode of Strong Love Speaks, the podcast. I'm Denise J. Charles.
And I am Gabriel Charles.
And this evening we're looking at the topic,
His needs, her needs.
Getting it right. You know, we got some interesting feedback from our last episode, our first episode actually, where we were looking at relationship vulnerability. And one of those reflections by one of our viewers spoke to the fact that there is that difference between men and women. And sometimes it would seem, perhaps it could have been interpreted this way from our discussion last time, that we as women sometimes want our men, our husbands, to be just like us. And I countered with the fact that that's really not true. We don't want our husbands to be just like us. And I don't think they want us to be just like them either. But what we really want to be able to do in our relationships, in our intimate relationships and in our marriages, we want to be able to maximize all that is good and the best practices, you know, in our relationships. When we think about life and we think about doing anything that we usually do, for example, we may decide we want to improve our income, so we go and study, and we do what is necessary to perhaps get better qualifications so that we can be qualified for a better job. And if we think about our health and about the need to lose weight or to practice a healthy lifestyle by changing our diet, being more active generally and taking care of our well-being and so on, by having that quiet time for ourselves, they're best practices that we put in place when we want to have better health. And when it comes to marriage and it comes to relationships, we believe in relationship best practices. And it is not that we think that men and women should be the same, but we think that there are some excellent human traits that both men and women should possess, that both men and women should become skilled in. And these best practices, or these better human traits, are those things that help us to be successful in our relationships. And it really goes beyond just marriage, because a lot of what we speak about is applicable to regular relationships, you know, people that we have relationships with that we're not married to. But of course, our focus this evening is on marriage, is on that intimate relationship. And when we think about his needs and her needs, we're thinking not about making us the same, that a man becomes exactly like a woman or that a woman becomes exactly like a man. But we're thinking of finding and harnessing those best practices, those things that help us to be the best that we can be in our relationships. And a big part of that is having a very good understanding of what a man requires, what a man needs to maximize or to actualize and to be in a relationship, and also what a woman needs to feel that sense of actualization and to reach her zenith, her pinnacle in a relationship. And we don't mean that is that's a space where there's a cap. You've reached the top and there's no place further for you to go. But really that a relationship, as we often say in our language and as we like to bring visual imagery, it's a journey, it's a relationship. You know, we talk about two people relating in a ship, going on a journey together, having to row in tandem to get from one point to the next. So when we are talking about his needs and her needs, we're really talking about helping each other, helping men, helping women, me as a woman, as a wife, helping my husband, and he as a man, helping me to reach that best space in our marriage, because he understands me and he understands what I require or what I need from him. And similarly, he's able to reach his best space in the relationship because I understand him as a man and I understand what he needs to get from me. So this evening we're going to be drilling down into this topic of his needs, her needs, getting it right. It's going to be a very interesting discussion. We'll be right back. And we're back. Now, obviously, we are talking about differences between men and women. For those of you who just joined us, our topic this evening is his needs, her needs, getting it right. And I'm going to start off with the husband. I'm going to start off with the guys. There's a lot that can be said about men and how they're different and what they like. And there's a lot that is perhaps known out there. We all know about men having the higher sex drive and where that comes from, because we all have hormones, okay? We all have hormones. We all share testosterone, we have progesterone, estrogen, cortisol. So there are a lot of hormones that men and women share. But obviously, they come in different levels or different percentages when we think of the genders. Men have a lot more testosterone, and because they have a higher level of testosterone, their sex drive tends to be higher. They tend to place a lot more emphasis on the physical enjoyment, sexual fulfillment. Not that women don't have that drive as well, don't get me wrong, but men tend to, that's right up there. That's right up there with breathing oxygen for most men. And for women, we're not talking about women yet, so let's dial back. So we're looking at men. So in my reading, in my research, I've seen that most authors, most relationship experts, and I am one of them who agrees with this, they put physical enjoyment, sexual physical enjoyment, pretty high up for men. There's also the mention of a man needing to have recreational companionship. Let me say, like he likes to know that his wife or his woman is somebody who he can have fun with. It doesn't mean they have to do exactly the same thing or like the same things. And I'm going to be asking my husband if he agrees with this, okay? Recreational companionship. Number 2, the whole question of admiration, being admired, being respected by his wife. She admires him. She has him up there. She thinks the world of him. She respects him.
But you're not talking about her.
Right, so I'm talking about the guy. The guy needing this from her.
Okay.
The guy, the husband, needing to be admired and needing to be respected by his wife.
Fair enough.
So let's look at those three. The physical, the sexual, the recreational companionship, being able to have fun together, whatever that fun looks like. And this is different from other fun other than the bedroom. And then the third one, admiration and respect. Gabriel, you are a man. And as I said in our first episode, you are a man's man. At least that's how that's how I see you, as a man's man. For you, do you agree with those 3 areas? Are there other needs that you would want to make? Because those are not all the needs, obviously. I mentioned those 3 first. Do you agree with those 3? And are there others that you can think of that you'd want to add to the equation when it comes to what a man really needs from his wife?
Even though there may be others, I think the 3 of those would really be the peak that most men would relate with, and the thing about it is all men are not the same. Even though men have these things in them, these things that you just spoke, these needs that you just spoke about in them, but it might not be as potent in each man.
Okay.
Right.
So it's not necessarily a cookie cutter for every single man. No. That every man has those exact needs, even in that order. Even though generally speaking, we might agree so.
Yeah. Yes. So when it comes to the physical, men they have a high sex drive. We know that for a fact, and women would tell you this, that men are the ones that have the high sex drive and not women. Although there are some women who that do have high sex drives, and some even more than men. Yeah. But as I said, all men are not the same. And whereas I may be one that might not be at the peak up there, there are those that peaking very, very high. When it comes to the other area that you spoke about, the recreational, we love to know that our wives, our partners, you know, that we can relate in that manner, you know, that we can appreciate each other, you know, in things that we do, in places that we go, you know, and it is good company for us.
Yeah.
It is good company for us because what it does, it solidifies the relationship in a good way.
Yeah, it's because it's about doing life together.
Right.
That's how I see it. You know, they say the couple that plays together stays together.
Okay.
We also know the couple that prays. You know, we do that another time.
Yeah.
But it's about doing life together. And when you think of recreational activities between a husband and a wife, or between two partners who've been together for a long time, you know, one of you might like to play tennis and the other one tags along.
Yeah.
Or even if you don't actually play, you come along and you watch, you support.
Right.
I mean, that's how we've lived our lives. I've not been traditionally a very physical person, like a games person as such, but my husband has been that type of person from even before we were married. You know, so I would often go and watch him play football. I would watch him play road tennis. I would watch him sometimes play dominoes, not all the time, because sometimes he would be playing dominoes and I wasn't around. But, you know, wherever he was involved in something physical, though, once I was there, you know, I would be very supportive. He's always been a physical person, running on the road, you know, doing all those kinds of things during the years of our marriage. And if I was not physically there, I still supported him doing it.
And that's what.
But that's important.
That's one of the things that we need as men.
Yeah.
You know, we love to know that we are being supported by our spouse.
Yeah.
You know, and when it comes to being validated and being there for him, men love that.
Yeah, yeah.
It makes a man feel like a man.
Yeah. So we're going to go right down now to the next one because I think they're connected. Yeah. So yes, you love having us there to enjoy with you your recreational activities. But and as you said, you want to be validated, you want to be affirmed, because in our being there with you, we are affirming you. We are saying you are important to me. That's why I'm spending my time doing this thing with you, or at least watching and supporting and cheering you on. And that goes right down next to the one about admiration, and which leads to respect. Men have this very strong need to be admired. And it is not just linked to something like a sporting activity or being in the gym or being buff and, you know, having a good body. We love those things, you know, to admire you, you know, when you're buffing it and, you know, you're looking all nice and so on. But it is about admiring you across the board in all of your ventures, supporting you and giving you that validation and letting you know audibly how we feel. And this is something that I love to do as a wife. I love to tell my husband, you know, how he looks. You know, I love to tell my husband about his food. For those of you who know us and those who may not know, you know, my husband is a fantastic cook. He is fantastic in the kitchen. His food is flavorful. He is fast. He can multitask and do many dishes at once. He's the one that does the big Christmas meal. You know, he does a fantastic job. And he does the big Sunday traditional family meal. And I try my best. I might miss 1 or 2 Sundays, but I try my best to always let him know that meal was good. You know, that meal was so good. That meal was so tasty. And his children can attest to this. His sons and our friends, their friends who've all eaten at us, they can attest to how good he is. So I like to let him know that I appreciate how well he cooks, and because he cooks with so much love, you know, and I think the love for his family and the love for the actual cooking comes out in his meals. I let him know this, you know, I validate him. when he used to build gates, he doesn't do it anymore, but when he used to build gates, lovely wrought iron gates, sometimes distinct designs that you wouldn't see other places, and he would do these things all by himself and craft them so wonderfully. These are things I've always admired in my husband.
And to have that support system, it makes you want to do things.
Do more.
It makes you want to really push yourself beyond that limit, right? And to know that your wife is there, and she's behind you, she's backing you and letting you know, well, listen, you're doing a good job, you have done a good job.
I wanted to stick a pin there. You know why? Because we've been talking about the physical, sexual, we've been talking about the recreational activities and supporting that.
Yeah.
We've talked about the admiration and the respect. And sometimes I think we as women make a mistake. I see this in a lot of the discourse on relationships, where we say women are so emotional and women need to be told that they're loved. Women need to be held. They need to have that emotional backing and that emotional support.
Yeah.
And we almost act as if men don't have that need. Men don't need to hear I love you. Is that so? Are we mistaken? Don't answer me yet. We are going to be right back as we delve some more into what a man needs and what happens when a man does not have those needs met. And we're back. Now, the whole question of love and feeling loved and having those emotional needs met. I know that we might be connecting some things that we spoke about earlier, in that this may not be entirely new, but I think the idea of a man feeling loved is worth talking about, and the idea of a man having emotional needs, a man needing to, I know we spoke about his need for support, we spoke about his need for admiration, and to know that he's doing life with his wife, and I can see love in those things as well. So I'm not trying to say love isn't there. Obviously those things are motivated by love. But what about being told that he's loved just for him, not about anything now that he's doing, not about him performing any task or being the breadwinner or bringing home the bacon or anything like that, but just about him.
Just letting.
How do you feel about that as a man?
I think we need to know it is happening to us. It is being said to us that, listen, I love you. It is good for the male to hear it, right? Sometimes we often believe that a man does not carry emotions.
Not need this thing,
so he
exactly.
so he don't need to hear that. But that's not true. And I think what it does, it brings him in a space where he can always want to be with his spouse. Because I remember, just let me say this here, I remember going to the gas station and while my tank of gas has been filled, and when it is finished, I would say, thank you, hon, thank you, dear. And my wife pulled me up and said, listen, there's only one, hon, there's only one there. So be careful what you are saying to the ladies when they do these things to you. And it took me to a place where I had to think and change, recalibrate, and understand that these things are to be said to my wife and not to other people, right? Even though some men might say, well, listen, I'm just saying it because
it doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything.
And I didn't think it meant anything.
Right? And even though it doesn't mean anything, but we do not know how your wife that is right there feels when you are actually saying it in her face. Right? So I had to change that whole thing and start to do things differently.
So you're crossing over now, talking about meeting my needs, right? You're crossing over, talking about my needs.
But let's go there.
Yeah, but before we go there, I just want to add to what you said about needing to feel loved and needing to be told that you're loved, because when I think about our relationship and how it developed, we were young, when you're young and you're in love, and, there's a lot of I love you, and, you mean the world to me. We were in an era, we started our relationship in an era that was not the digital age, obviously. We've been married for 40 years, 40 plus, so there was a lot of writing, there were a lot of traditional telephone calls, there were postcards, there were even love letters,
songs.
because we were away from each other at some points in time, so there were love letters exchanged and that type of thing. But the whole tradition or the practice of expressing love was something that we began our relationship with.
Yes.
That was very much our foundation as a couple. And we kept it going, we kept it going. Obviously, as you are together longer, I think the expression of love perhaps changes. I wouldn't say it becomes...
It doesn't diminish.
It doesn't diminish.
It just changes.
It just changes. It's not that we never say I love you, because we still do it.
Yes.
We still say I love you. We may not do it as many times as we used to do it before when we were courting, before we were married. But we definitely still speak those words to each other. They still mean a lot to us. And this is something that I think I would love wives to understand, that your man is emotional. Your husband is an emotional being.
Very much so.
He needs to feel loved. He needs to hear you speak love to him. And obviously, he needs you to demonstrate that love through your sexual relationship. Now, we're going to dedicate an entire session to talking about sex, so I'm not going to go into it too deeply now. But before we switch to speaking about the woman and her needs, I wanted to emphasize that, because as counselors, we have counseled a number of couples. We've been in fora where couples have expressed their greatest challenges. And one of those recurring themes is the disparity, not only in terms of sexual desire between husband and wives, but the fact that many men feel deprived. They feel deprived sexually. And because men are physical, sometimes we think, oh, it's just sex that he wants. And it's just that. There's nothing else connected to it. But I don't think that wives understand, because husbands perhaps aren't so good at articulating this. I touched on this last time in our first episode, that the desire for sex in a normal, healthy relationship is usually connected to his love for you. So when a man desires sex, often feel flattered, because he loves you and he wants to connect with you physically.
It is that glue
that keeps you together. And of course, in a dysfunctional marriage or in a dysfunctional relationship, that may not be true. He may be demanding lots of sex from you, and it's coming from a dysfunctional space. He's doing it as a form of escape. He's doing it as a form of domination. He's doing it because he's just meeting that physical need, and he really needs to love you, and he doesn't perhaps love you as he should. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that every time a man desires lots of sex, it is grounded in love. I'm speaking of a normal, healthy, functioning relationship. That is where it is usually. He wants to be with you because he loves you. But then, you have the opposite, which can happen when there's dysfunctionality that hasn't been dealt with in the relationship. It hasn't been addressed. And, it needs to be. And in those cases, I know women want to get away. They don't want to connect because they don't feel loved through the act. But that's a whole other discussion that we're going to have sometime soon when we look more broadly at the whole issue of sex and sexual intimacy in relationships.
So now...
So we're going to...
Switch. Let's switch it. Her needs.
We're going to be looking at my needs when we come back. You're watching Strong Love Speaks, the podcast. We are back.
Now it is my turn to ask her that question that is just resonating inside of me for her. Your needs, her needs.
They say that the book about women, either it hasn't been written or it is too big to read. There are a lot of needs that we women have. We are very complex, wonderfully complicated creatures. If I had to try to prioritize the millions of needs that we have, I would say the number one need for me, and perhaps this would be echoed by my female listeners and viewers, we need to feel loved. Let me
Please.
We need to feel loved, and we need to feel that we are loved as priority. You know, Rihanna has a song, I want you to make me feel like I'm the only girl in the world. Yeah, we want to feel like if we are the only girl in the world for you, that we are your number one, and that we mean the world to you, and that you are totally committed to us. So that need is wrapped up a lot in being able to sense presence in the relationship, and I'm going to explain what I mean.
Because I was just going to ask you, how can a man derive to meeting those needs, as you're saying, right? Because if the man is bringing home the bacon, the man is seeing after the home, the man is making sure that your needs, where as far as he can give, is being met.
Right. So we understand all of that.
Okay.
We understand all of that, and we know that men sometimes see love in very practical ways. So he's providing, he's, you know, taking you places, buying you things. These are all good, and I know there are ways of demonstrating love. But when I say presence, it's something that's almost imperceptible. It's like just wanting to know that this person will be there for you come what may. That their commitment to you is unwavering. There's a verse in the Bible that talks about a man leaving his father and mother and cleaving to his wife, and the two becoming one. I had to do a presentation at a church a while ago, and when I was doing my research on that verse on cleaving, I saw comparisons to words like loving hard, loving strong, loving deep. So the idea of cleaving to your wife is that you're going to love her with every fiber of your being. You're going to keep pursuing her. And we always talk about this, Gabriel, when we're doing sessions with couples, because we always talk about the fact that, you know, during the premarital stage, you know, the stage when you've met the person and you've perhaps decided that you want to spend your life with that person. Even if you haven't yet decided that, but you're interested in that person, you pursue.
Yeah.
You know, you do certain things to let that person know that they're loved. You know, you might buy them things. You might, you know,
take them places.
Take them places. In today's age, it would be texting them a lot.
Yeah.
You know, back in our day, it was phone calling.
Yeah.
You know, or writing notes and so on. But you express. Men can be expressive when they want to be, you know.
We are expressive.
You know? So you do all these things, but then you catch the bird. You catch the bird, you know? You catch that bird. And what happens after that?
Put it in the cage.
You put that bird in the cage and you just watch that bird, you know? You don't pursue anymore, because it's almost as if, yeah, it's a given now. I have her, I have what I want, I have what I need, I'm getting all that I need from her. Why do I need to still keep pursuing her? But that's the thing, we women want to be pursued all the time. And it's not just pursued sexually. We actually do want to be pursued sexually, because if the man that we love is not pursuing us sexually, we're also going to wonder what's wrong with us. We're going to wonder if we're sexy enough, if we're beautiful enough, if we're attractive enough. What is it about me that he's not pursuing me? So we do want to be pursued sexually by the man that we love. So that's there. But we also want to be pursued for who we are outside of the sexual relationship.
Yeah.
You know, we don't just want to be objectified. And I say
That's a strong word.
I say this, you know, a bit of tongue in cheek, because of the amount of objectification we see of women, by women objectifying their own selves in today's culture, you know, through dress, through dance, you know, and seeing it, labeling it as female empowerment. And I don't agree with that. I don't believe in it in the extreme form that I'm seeing. But for most of us women who are thinking about ourselves, and we are thinking about our commitment in our relationships, or we're thinking about ourselves within the context of a committed relationship, a marriage, We don't want to be objectified. You know, yes, we want to be desired. We want to be desirable and attractive to our husband, but we want him to still see us as a full person. We don't want to be a sex object, even though we want to be sexy to him. You know, so that's a thing there that men have to understand. So we do want to be sexy to you as to our husband. We want our husband to see us as being sexy and to want us, to desire us. That's a part of the love paradigm. But we still want to be seen and loved and appreciated for who we are outside of that. I have a brain. I can think. I can make decisions for myself. I can advise you. I can support you. But I can also give you advice. I would want you to listen to me at times.
Yeah.
You know, I want you to respect my opinion, respect my ability to stand on my own 2 feet and make my own decisions, even though I'm going to still run them by you. You know, I am not belittled. So these are the kinds of things for me as an independent. I don't like to use that term, you know, too strongly, but you understand what I mean. I won't say independent, as an interdependent woman, because I'm in a marriage. So I don't like to use that term, but, you know, yes, I can make decisions, certain decisions for myself. You know, I'm an educated woman, etc. But I still rely so heavily on my husband's opinion. You know, I don't go there and make mammoth decisions on my own. You know, anything that I'm going to do of any significance, I run by my husband. His input, his opinion is very, very important to me. And I think we want to feel comfortable in our relationships where we can have that understanding from our husband. You know, that you're there to offer your support, you're there to provide advice, just as we can provide advice.
Protection.
Yeah, protection. So I think what we want as women, as I said earlier, we want to be loved, we want to be supported, but we also want freedom to be who we are.
Yeah.
And I am so happy to say that I have that from my husband. I know not every woman does. You know, my husband has never been the type of man to try to control what I wear or to try to control how I do my hair. You know, telling me, oh, I don't like that hairstyle on you, or I don't want you to have locks, or I don't want you to have natural hair. Nope, I have never experienced any such thing. And I credit him with this because I know not every man has been like this. I am happy that this is the type of man I'm married to, who is very secure in himself and does not have that need to control me to that extent, to control what I do with my hair. You know, he appreciates that I am a woman. And I'm saying that this is something that we as women need. We need that freedom to be ourselves as women. A woman likes to be able to change up her looks, and to, one day you might have red hair, the next day it's blonde. One minute you're wearing braids because you want long hair, or you have locks. I had locks for 23 years. I had natural dreads for 23 years. I was natural first with twists for about 2 years. And then I did locks, and I had them for 23 years. They were long, they were short. I've cut them several times. I had them short, I had them long, I had them mid-back, you know, and that was never an issue in our relationship.
No.
And when I came to the point last year...
Because I wanted you to be you.
Yeah, when I came to that point last year when I wanted to cut them, my husband was seeing me with long hair for so long, but yet when I told him I wanted to cut it short, it was like, babe, do whatever you want to do with your hair.
And I'm the person that do the cutting.
Exactly. He cut it for me as well. You know, he cut it. He cut it for me as well. He's and has cut it before as well. Shaved the back. Yeah, I'm saying all of this to say that I appreciate having those needs met by my husband, but I know not every woman is in that space. But this is a very important need that women have. That need for freedom within the context of your marriage. You're married, yes, and we know that marriage is a partnership. There's a bi-directional relationship going on. There's interdependence. I don't like to talk about independence as such, even though I understand what people mean by it, but that's why I pulled it back, because we are ready to be interdependent.
Yeah.
We don't make decisions, or we shouldn't just make decisions on our own, both male and female.
I want you to move from there a minute and ask you about your husband being a protector for you.
Yeah.
How do you see that? Because men believe that as long as they're in a relationship, in a home, they're protecting the woman. I want you to give some feedback in relation to how you see that protection.
Oh, for me, that's a big one. That's a big role for me. And Let me say that as a woman, I am very traditional. So I might be educated, I work, I am a professional woman, I've done many things on my own and in terms of studying and writing and lots of stuff I've done. But I am very traditional when it comes to home and how I see my husband and his role. I believe my husband is my protector. And it is a very important role that he fulfills. And I think a lot of women see that. Some women today may not want to admit it because they think it's not politically correct with feminist ideology to say that your husband is your protector. Well, I can protect myself. It's fine if you can protect yourself. It's fine if you know karate. It's fine if you have a gun and legally and can use it if you need to. It's fine if you feel you can do life on your own, even within the context of your marriage. But marriage is really a partnership. Yeah. And marriage is a partnership that is built on complementarity. And that simply means that we are to complement each other. And I mentioned that in our first episode, that we are here to complement each other. We are here to beef each other up in the areas where we may not be so strong. So even though there are women who train, who are great kickboxers, are great, maybe black belts, they may be military women, or they may be police officers, or, they are just skilled physically. They may be athletes. Yeah. They lift weights. They're strong physically. And some of them may even be stronger than men. Yeah. And they may feel, well, I don't really need a man to do these things because I can do it for myself. They may be bold and courageous, and these are great traits to have. And we know that traditionally in Barbados and in the Caribbean, we've had female-led households where women, with the absence of men, have had to do it all. And kudos, and I salute those women. But within the context of a marriage, we are here to share and do life together. And very much, I think that role of protector, even if you are a strong woman, there's nothing wrong with giving way to your husband, to allow him to fulfill that role that is so important to him, to look after you, to take care of you. And this has nothing to do with, well, it has something to do with money, yes, because if he has money, he can obviously take care of you in certain ways. Yeah. But it's also about protecting you, being there for you. For me, it's as silly as waking my husband up to move a gecko lizard, or to kill a really large centipede. Although I kill many of them myself, But yes, this whole idea of protection and being there for me in that space is extremely important. But we're going to be right back, and we are going to wrap things up as we look at what happens when these needs are not met, and what we can do to salvage our marriage. And we're back. And this is our final segment, where we're going to spend some time looking at what happens when those needs aren't met, and then what we can do about it. Now, I think that when our basic needs, our basic relational needs are not met, let me say not just our basic needs, but our primary relationship needs and our secondary relationship needs, because we have some that are high up, we have some that are middle, some that are low. But I'm just going to look at it generally, okay, globally. When our relationship needs are not met, we place our relationship in a very volatile position. And it's really a dangerous space, because if those needs aren't being met, and they're not being met regularly, this is something that is happening constantly, where you're not happy because your needs aren't being met, then the relationship can become really volatile. It can be in danger of external interference, because as human beings, we want to have our needs met. We want to be happy. And while marriage is not, obviously it's a partnership, it's not a singular thing. And it's not just about you, it's about you and someone else. But as human beings, we think about ourselves. I mean, we talk about self-love a lot today. We talk about, self-awareness. And today, particularly in today's culture, where there's so much talk about the self, and, sometimes a bit too much, But you understand what I'm saying. Within the context of marriage, we have to balance it. So you want to be happy, you want to self-actualize, but you also understand that you are there also for someone else. But if you find yourself in that marriage not having your needs met, and this makes you really unhappy, then it's going to be dangerous, because you're going to begin to disconnect from your spouse,
and
you could become susceptible to someone else who is perhaps giving you what you need.
Yes, because if you're not vulnerable to your spouse, you're going to be vulnerable to
someone else,
outside influences.
Yes, so that can happen.
And the thing about it is, there is always the prey waiting to prey on you.
That's right. Prey.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very, very true.
Yeah, and if you're not receiving the things that you believe that you should receive in the relationship, what happens on the outside coming into you, you will feel as though, well, hey, what's coming up from out there is what I really need.
Is what you really need. Because you're in a vulnerable space. So it becomes very attractive to you. And I'm not saying that this happens with everyone. Don't get me wrong. We're not saying that, because it's not being met inside the home, you're going to go outside. That's not what we're saying.
No.
But what we're saying is that it can make you vulnerable.
Yes, especially if it is prolonged.
Yeah, it can make you vulnerable.
Yeah.
That's one thing that can happen. You can also just become disconnected from your partner. You may not necessarily be vulnerable to anybody else. There may not be anyone bringing anything to you, and you're just not interested in that. But you become so hurt that you just become disconnected from your spouse. You distance yourself. And when you distance yourself and you're not connecting, or even if you do connect physically, there isn't that deep emotional bond, because you're unhappy and you're not talking about it. And because you're not talking about it, then it deepens, and the rift deepens, and bitterness sets in, and that type of thing. And you really begin to feel like strangers just living together in a house like roommates. You're living together like roommates. You may still be having sex, because it's just a natural physical release. You're paying the bills together, you're doing life with the children together, but you don't feel connected.
Sometimes sexual intimacy doesn't even happen
in some cases.
because you usually find, and I speak to the ladies about this, you usually find that, hey, there is the headaches and the different things that
other types of aches.
Yeah. That happens, and it keeps the man away.
Yeah, you know. So these things can happen when the needs aren't being met. When it comes to a woman, her emotional needs aren't being met, many women become angry.
Yes.
Anger might not be their first recourse, but they may become very sad at first. And sometimes women repeatedly say what they want, but then the man never listens, he never hears, he doesn't change his behavior. So they get tired. They get tired talking about it. So as a result, they pull away.
Yes.
And they may go into a shell, they may not be physical with their husbands, or even if they are, they're not enjoying it. Because everything is connected, and it can really spell danger for the marriage relationship when both of you, or even one of you, those needs aren't being met, and there's no discussion about it.
You become strangers.
You become strangers. You're just living in a house together, as I said before, like roommates. So what should you do about your relationship when you found it in this place where neither of your needs are being met? And I mean, not that any needs are not being met at all, but we're saying that there's some significant primary needs you have that aren't being met. And as a result, you're unhappy in the relationship. What do you do from there? How do you solve this issue? And it's really not rocket science, but yet it becomes something that is so difficult. And this is connected to what we were speaking about in our very first episode. Both of you need to be vulnerable with each other, and you need to, it may not happen at the same time, but one of you needs to get the courage and make that decision. I am going to be the one to take the first step. We have to talk about this. We have to talk about the pervasive unhappiness. We have to talk about the disconnection. We have to talk about the lack of sexual intimacy. We have to talk about the fact that we don't do certain things together. We don't pray together. We don't connect emotionally deeply. We never say I love you anymore. somebody has to be strong enough and tough enough to have that conversation. And
So what you're saying, in essence, there has been a communication breakdown.
yes, there has been a communication breakdown because the absence of the meeting of needs means that there has been a communication problem.
Yeah.
But then if one of you recognizes that this is wrong and this needs to be remedied, then it needs to be broached. The topic needs to be broached.
Let's
you
start.
need to talk about it. And it's easy to say talk about it. And I know from experience, and I know from counseling that when things are bad, it's very difficult to have a conversation and to get things going because there's so much anger, there's so much disconnection,
So much hurt.
and even if one person wants to talk and the other person doesn't want to talk, my husband and I went through this, we lived through this, so we know what we're talking about. You know, when one person wants to talk but the other one doesn't want to talk, it's very, very difficult to navigate. So I'm saying to you, this is where outside help sometimes is necessary.
Counseling.
Find a good counselor. Find someone that you trust. If you're at church, it may be your pastor. If your pastor is not a trained counselor that you prefer to go to, find a trained counselor, someone who deals with marriages, who has a good reputation in terms of dealing with marriages and dealing with family to talk to. Even if your spouse does not want to go with you, go alone at first. Talk things through with a professional, and that person will help you navigate, you know, how best to bring this to the table. If both of you are willing to go, that's even better because then you can begin the journey together of repairing, of hearing each other first, and then taking those steps to repair what needs to be repaired, so those needs can be met. Sometimes it simply needs a recalibration, almost a recommitment on both of your parts to understanding what marriage is about. Because the reality is that the humdrum of life and the complexity of life and the rat race, you know, that we are all threatened by to some degree or the other, that can just knock all the romance and all the, you know, the important stuff out of marriage, and then you just end up doing life. You're so busy going here and there, making ends meet. You forget about each other. You take each other for granted, and as I said, you end up living like two roommates when that is not what you signed up for. When you thought of marriage, you really wanted, because this marriage relationship, what makes marriage, it has to be different. It has to be different from your other relationships, and that means that there has to be an intimacy that distinguishes it from every other relationship. And that intimacy has to be both emotional, it has to be spiritual, it has to be sexual. That is what characterizes and solidifies the marriage covenant. It is not just, marriage is not just a contract. It's not just two people living in a house deciding to do life together. It is a covenant before God, and it means something. And if you want your marriage to work, then you have to be willing to work it. You know, you have to have those tough conversations. If you need outside help, seek that help. Listen to shows like this, you know, great podcasts, read good books, a lot of books. We have lots of books in our library that we've collected over the years that have helped us. And there's nothing wrong with turning to a good book, turning to a good video, listening to a good podcast, going into family fora or, you know, couples groups, finding another couple who you see with a strong relationship, being mentored by them. We were mentored by a couple. It wasn't anything official, but they did mentor us, you know, to some degree. So there's so many ways that we can get ourselves into spaces where we can have those difficult conversations that we need to have with each other, so that we can make sure that we meet each other's needs, because it can be done.
There's so much to say that we just can't say it all right now.
But we want to thank you for joining us for this second episode of Strong Love Speaks, the podcast. We've enjoyed having this conversation with you. Don't forget to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. Share it widely as much as possible so that more and more people can access this information. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. We look forward to seeing you next time. Good night.
Good night.